So that's the thing. We talked about performance mistakes, like things that people get wrong
Mm-hmm.
commonly. And you mentioned transparency, as you mentioned pixel misalignment, and you mentioned over-optimizing, which are definitely three killer things. Let's think about when it comes to actually making things faster. And it's things that I've said earlier, like scrolling content, like table views and collection views, where they're going to see, layout passes happening 5, 10 times a second, and you want 60 FPS or 120 FPS on the
Mm-hmm.
ProMotion iPad Pro. Are there any tips you think there, particularly when you really want to optimize these table views, these collection views, when they're moving around quickly? What can people do to get really good performance there?
Well, one of the things that people can do is use the should rasterize property of a layer. And this property allows the contents of a layer to be pre-rendered and be placed into an off-screen buffer. So when user is scrolling, instead of redrawing every time the screen moves, the cached layer is used to display the contents of a cell instead. Right. The cost of this is that there is an off-screen buffer that so it has an initial setup cost. So the initial setup is a little bit slower because this needs to be rendered, but subsequently performance is faster. So, but you don't want to be doing this if you have content within the cell that's changing when you scroll, like. Maybe you have a timer that's counting down, or maybe there's something else in the cell that's making it change, like you have a color, I don't know, effect. So you don't want to be doing it then, because then you've paid the price of setting up the buffer and you're refreshing it every time.
Right.
But if you don't need to refresh your content once it's there, that's it. Then you can just set should rasterize to true, and that should be a bit of a performance boost.
So folks haven't tried it before. Should rasterize, what it's effectively doing, as Gina said, is to render the cell, the item, the view once, and then store that rendered picture, literally the pixels for that picture, in RAM, stashed away. So there's a cost to it. There's a CPU cost to doing that rendering and stashing it away. And there's memory cost to it. You've now taken up more memory for that view being stored, that image being stored away in RAM. But later on, every other time that view's shown, it's not being re-rendered. It's being pulled from RAM directly and just put on the screen. And it looks the same. It interacts exactly the same way, but now it's significantly faster. So you've traded some CPU for some RAM, right?
Yeah, and exactly. And but like I said, this only really works if you don't have things changing within the cells. But maybe you do want to have like dynamic content. But I think you also need to step back a little bit out of your developer shoes and put on your UX shoes, or I guess your UX hat, and think about what does your does your app really need some of the dynamic content that you're displaying? Like, do you need a video to be playing when you're scrolling a cell, or could you pause it? Do you need like something to be moving and scrolling and animating, or are there ways you can simplify that will ultimately help you with performance? Are there things that may be more distracting or are nice to haves that really don't add much value? So there's some trade-offs you can make there for the coolness of your effects versus performance a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I want folks to think about when they're listening to this is performance isn't just how fast your screen appears or how fast scrolling works. Performance has an actual cost to users. You are draining their battery life faster by doing more work, by doing unnecessary work. And there's that thing in the settings. You can go to battery usage, and it'll tell you like the wall of shame. You want to avoid like being in the top 3 or 4 of those apps. You want to be fairly light on battery. That involves things like getting your algorithms right, caching your views, not doing too much work where it isn't really required. So performance is more than just about scrolling speed or rendering speed, also about battery and more.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also about, now this is stepping further away from performance, but building multi-step animations is really fun for developers, but it's also is it that fun for users to watch an animation that takes multiple seconds and isn't really adding any value? It was just fun to implement.